The sun was setting on Mars Colony 7 when Tom wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the small shuttle he had just finished repairing. His repair shop sat at the very edge of human space, the last stop before the vast unknown. Most days were quiet, with only the occasional trader or mining vessel needing repairs. Today had been no different, until now. The first sign that something was wrong came from the emergency alarm system. Tom rushed to his computer terminal, expecting to see another mining accident alert. Instead, what he saw made him blink twice to make sure his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. A massive ship, easily 20 times the size of the largest human vessel he'd ever worked on, was approaching his station. "That can't be right," Tom muttered to himself, adjusting his worn baseball cap. The scanner showed energy readings unlike anything he'd seen before. The ship's design was completely alien, literally. His communication system crackled to life. "Human repair station. This is the diplomatic vessel Light of Tomorrow. We require immediate assistance. Our primary drive system is failing." Tom took a deep breath. First contact situations weren't covered in his repair manual, but a ship in need was a ship in need. "This is Tom's repair shop. I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from your vessel. Can you give me more details about the problem?" There was a pause, then the voice returned, sounding distinctly non-human despite the translator. "Our quantum core drive is experiencing cascade failures. We have already consulted with the finest engineers of our species, but none would attempt repairs due to the risk involved." Tom walked to his workshop's massive entrance bay, watching as the alien ship slowly maneuvered into position. Its hull seemed to shimmer with an internal light, making it look more like a living creature than a spacecraft. As it drew closer, he could see the obvious signs of power fluctuations. Parts of the ship would briefly dim before brightening again, like a heartbeat growing increasingly irregular. "Bring her in slow," Tom instructed, falling back on his years of experience. "I'm opening the main bay doors now." He pressed the controls, and the massive doors slowly parted, revealing his workshop's interior. It wasn't fancy, but it was well equipped, with tools covering every wall and diagnostic equipment scattered across various workbenches. The alien ship's landing was surprisingly graceful despite its obvious problems. As soon as it settled, a door appeared in its smooth hull, seemingly forming out of nowhere. Tom grabbed his basic toolkit. Sometimes the simplest tools were the most useful, and walked forward to meet his unusual customers. 3 figures emerged from the ship. They were tall, their bodies covered in what looked like flowing metallic robes that moved as if caught in an invisible wind. Their faces were smooth and featureless except for 4 glowing spots that Tom assumed were eyes. "Welcome to my shop," Tom said, trying to sound as professional as possible while his heart raced with excitement. "I'm Tom, the mechanic." The tallest of the aliens stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Bright Circle," it said, its translator making the words sound slightly mechanical. "We apologize for arriving without warning, but our situation is desperate. Our ship's quantum core is deteriorating. We have visited 17 repair stations of our own species, and all refused to help, saying the risk of catastrophic failure was too high." Tom nodded, already walking toward the ship. "Well, let's take a look first. Can't tell you if I can fix it until I see what's wrong with it." The aliens exchanged glances. "You would attempt repairs where our most advanced engineers feared to try?" Bright Circle asked, those glowing eyes growing slightly brighter. Tom shrugged, pulling a flashlight from his pocket. "That's my job. If it's broken, I fix it. Simple as that. Now, show me where this quantum core of yours is located." As he followed the aliens into their ship, Tom couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best jobs were the ones that seemed impossible at first glance. Besides, he thought, impossible just meant nobody had figured out how to do it yet. The inside of the alien ship was unlike anything Tom had ever seen. The corridors seemed to breathe, their walls shifting with patterns of light that followed their movement. Ambassador Bright Circle led the way, while the other two aliens followed behind Tom, their metallic robes making soft chiming sounds as they walked. "The quantum core chamber is ahead," Bright Circle said, stopping before a door that glowed with warning symbols. "I must warn you. The energy readings are highly unstable." Tom pulled out his handheld scanner, a device he built himself from spare parts and years of experience. The readings made his eyebrows shoot up. "Well, that's not good," he muttered, adjusting some dials. "What do you see?" one of the aliens behind him asked, their voice tinged with worry. "Your quantum core isn't just failing," Tom said, studying the readings carefully. "It's about to collapse in on itself. The containment field is barely holding." He looked up at Bright Circle. "No wonder your engineers wouldn't touch it. One wrong move and this whole section of space could become a very small, very dense point of matter." The alien's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. Tom was beginning to recognize this as a sign of distress. "Then you two must refuse to help," Bright Circle said, the translator unable to hide the disappointment in their voice. Tom shook his head, already pulling tools from his belt. "I didn't say that. I said it was dangerous. There's a difference." He stepped closer to the door, holding his scanner near the warning symbols. "Can you get me inside?" The aliens hesitated, then Bright Circle pressed their hand against the door. It dissolved, revealing a chamber that hummed with power. In the center, suspended in a complex web of energy fields, was a sphere of pure darkness about the size of a basketball. Around it, dozens of crystal-like structures pulsed with light, each one seemingly fighting against the others. Tom whistled low. "Now that's interesting." He walked around the sphere, his scanner beeping frantically. "Your quantum core is fighting against its own containment system. It's like..." He paused, searching for a simple way to explain it. "It's like you've got too many hands trying to hold onto a soap bubble. Each one is trying so hard not to break it that they're actually making it unstable." The aliens watched him work, their confusion evident in their posture. "The containment systems are perfectly calibrated," one of them said. "Each crystal is programmed to maintain exact quantum harmony." "That's the problem right there," Tom said, kneeling down to examine one of the crystal structures. "You're trying to force perfect harmony in an imperfect universe. Nature doesn't work that way." He stood up, pocketing his scanner. "Your quantum core needs room to breathe, to adjust itself naturally." "Impossible." The third alien spoke for the first time. "The quantum matrices must be perfectly aligned or the core will collapse." Tom smiled, pulling out a small tool that looked like a cross between a wrench and a tuning fork. "Perfect alignment isn't the same as perfect stability. Look at how your core is pulsing. It's trying to find its natural rhythm, but your containment field won't let it." He turned to face Bright Circle. "I can fix this, but you're not going to like how I'm going to do it. Your engineers were right about one thing. Trying to maintain perfect control over the core will lead to disaster, but letting go of a little control," he gestured at the struggling sphere of darkness, "that might just save your ship." The aliens huddled together, their metallic robes creating a symphony of soft chimes as they discussed among themselves. Finally, Bright Circle turned back to Tom. "We have traveled too far to turn back now. What do you propose to do?" Tom grinned, already reaching for more tools. "Sometimes the best way to fix something isn't to force it to work perfectly, but to help it work naturally. Now let me show you how we humans handle problems that seem impossible." Tom laid out his tools on a floating platform the aliens had provided, each one looking impossibly crude next to the ship's advanced technology. He'd spent the last hour studying the quantum core's behavior, making notes on an old paper notepad, something that had made the aliens exchange worried glances. "Your containment system," Tom said, pointing at the crystal structures. "It's too smart for its own good. Each crystal is constantly trying to adjust to create perfect balance, but they're all doing it at the same time. It's like having too many cooks in the kitchen." "The crystals are quantum linked," Bright Circle explained. "They operate as one perfect system." Tom shook his head. That's exactly the problem. Here, let me show you something. He pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the dark sphere. Watch the energy patterns. The aliens gathered around as Tom's scanner projected a holographic display. The quantum core's energy was flowing in complex patterns, trying to shift and adapt, but being forced back into rigid alignment by the containment field. See these spikes? Tom traced them with his finger. Your core wants to find its natural rhythm, but your containment system keeps forcing it back to what it thinks is perfect. It's like trying to force a river to flow in a perfectly straight line. The third alien, who had introduced himself as Deep Thought, stepped forward. But precision is essential for quantum stability. Our greatest scientists developed these systems over centuries. Tom picked up what looked like an old wrench with strange modifications. Sometimes the smartest solution is the simplest one. Your scientists were so focused on making everything perfect, they forgot that nature itself isn't perfect. It's chaotic, but that chaos has its own kind of balance. He walked to one of the crystal arrays. I'm going to deliberately desynchronize some of these crystals. Not enough to break the containment, but enough to give the core some room to find its own stability. The alien's eyes flashed in alarm. That is precisely what our engineers said would cause catastrophic failure. Bright Circle exclaimed. On my planet, Tom said, already starting to work, we have these things called suspension bridges. The early ones were built to be rigid, and they collapsed in strong winds. Then we learned that building them with some flexibility actually made them stronger. They could bend with the force instead of breaking. He adjusted something on the crystal array, causing it to flicker slightly. Your quantum core is like that bridge. Right now, it's too rigid. We need to give it just enough flexibility to find its natural balance. Tom moved to another crystal, making small adjustments. The trick isn't to control everything perfectly. It's to create boundaries that allow for natural movement within safe limits. The aliens watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Tom continued his work. He moved from crystal to crystal, making tiny adjustments that seemed random but followed a pattern only he could see. The quantum core's violent pulses began to change, becoming more rhythmic. Impossible, Deep Thought whispered, watching the readings on their own instruments. The quantum field is stabilizing. But how? These adjustments go against every principle of quantum engineering we know. Tom stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. Sometimes you have to unlearn what you know to learn something new. Your principles aren't wrong. They're just incomplete. The universe is messy, and sometimes the best way to work with it is to embrace that mess. The core's dark sphere had stopped its erratic pulsing, now gently swaying in its containment field like a leaf in a gentle breeze. The crystal arrays, no longer fighting each other, created a harmonious pattern of light that filled the chamber. This is just the beginning, Tom said, reaching for another tool. Now comes the tricky part, teaching your containment system to maintain this new balance without trying to force perfection. Are you ready to see how we humans handle impossible problems? Tom stood before the quantum core's control panel, his modified tools spread out before him like a surgeon's instruments. He had spent the last 2 hours carefully preparing for this moment, double-checking every calculation on his worn notepad. What I'm about to do, he explained to the anxious aliens, is going to look wrong. Your systems are going to scream warnings at you, but you need to trust me and not override anything. Can you do that? Bright Circle's metallic robes rippled with tension. Our entire ship, our lives, are in your hands, human mechanic. We will trust you. Tom nodded, picking up what looked like a crude device made from spare parts. This tool will help me sync with your quantum crystals. It's not pretty, but it works. He had built it in his workshop using parts from old mining sensors and a broken quantum scanner. That device cannot possibly interface with our advanced systems, Deep Thought protested, but fell silent as Tom plugged it in, and the control panel immediately responded. First step, Tom muttered, mostly to himself, introduce controlled chaos. His fingers moved across the panel, making adjustments that caused the aliens' instruments to flash urgent warnings. The quantum core's dark sphere began to pulse irregularly. Warning sirens blared throughout the ship. The containment field is destabilizing. One of the aliens shouted, their metallic robes chiming discordantly with their movement. "No," Tom said calmly, "it's adapting. Watch." He pointed to the energy patterns displayed on his crude scanner. The chaotic pulses were beginning to form patterns, not the rigid, perfect patterns the aliens had programmed, but natural, flowing rhythms. Tom moved quickly now, his hands dancing across controls and crystals. He was using both alien technology and his own jury-rigged tools, combining them in ways their creators had never intended. The quantum core's dark sphere began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. "The core temperature is rising," Deep Thought announced, their voice tight with fear. "We must shut it down." "Wait," Tom commanded, not taking his eyes off his work. "This is supposed to happen." The core is finding its balance. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he made one delicate adjustment after another. The chamber filled with swirling patterns of light as the quantum crystals responded to Tom's modifications. The core's spin created a gentle humming sound that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. Warning lights still flashed, but they were becoming less frequent. "Now comes the hard part," Tom said, picking up his modified wrench. "We need to teach your containment system to maintain this new balance." He began adjusting the crystal arrays one by one, each movement precise and carefully calculated. The aliens watched in tense silence as their advanced technology was modified by human tools that looked primitive by comparison. The ship's AI continued to flash warnings, but they were changing from critical alerts to confusion notifications. It couldn't understand why the unstable system was actually working better. Suddenly, the quantum core's spin steadied. The dark sphere settled into a gentle rotation, like a planet orbiting its sun. The crystal arrays pulsed in harmony, no longer fighting against each other, but working together in a natural rhythm. Tom stepped back, checking his readings one last time. "There," he said, allowing himself a small smile. "Your quantum core is now stable. It's not running at the perfect efficiency your engineers designed it for, but it's running at the best efficiency it can naturally maintain." The warning lights faded. The ship's hum changed from an erratic pulse to a steady, healthy tone. Even the aliens' metallic robes seemed to shimmer more smoothly in response to the stabilized energy field. Deep Thought stared at their instruments in amazement. "The core, it's operating at 98.3% efficiency. That's impossible. Our calculations showed that anything less than 100% would lead to collapse." Tom chuckled, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "Sometimes the best solution isn't perfect. It's just perfectly good enough." The quantum core chamber had become quiet, filled only with the gentle hum of properly functioning machinery. Tom sat on a floating platform, sharing a drink of water from his old metal bottle, while the aliens studied their readings with increasing amazement. "I still cannot fully comprehend what you did," Deep Thought said, their glowing eyes fixed on a display showing the core's energy patterns. "By all our scientific understanding, introducing imperfection should have led to failure. Instead, it created harmony." Tom took another sip of water. "Let me tell you a story about Earth," he said, setting down his bottle. "A long time ago, we had these huge sailing ships made of wood. The engineers of that time tried to make them as strong as possible by using the straightest, most perfect trees they could find. The aliens gathered closer, their metallic robes catching the light from the stabilized quantum core. "Did this not make the ships stronger?" Bright Circle asked. "Actually, no," Tom smiled. "The ships made from perfect, straight trees often broke in storms, but ships made from trees that had grown crooked, that had faced wind and harsh weather while growing. Those ships were stronger because they could bend without breaking. Those imperfect trees had learned to adapt." He stood up and walked to the quantum core's display. "Your civilization took a different path than ours. You had the resources and time to develop technology that aimed for perfection. We humans, we had to make do with what we had. But your tools, the third alien gestured at Tom's makeshift equipment. They are so primitive. Primitive doesn't mean ineffective, Tom replied. Look at this scanner I built. It's made from mining equipment parts and old sensors, but it works because I understood what I needed it to do. Sometimes understanding the principle is more important than having the perfect tool. Deep thought moved to the central console. Our engineers have always focused on achieving perfect efficiency, perfect harmony. We believe that was the only path to advancement. That's the funny thing about advancement, Tom said, walking around the quantum core. There's never just one path. Humans advance by adapting, by finding ways to work with imperfection instead of trying to eliminate it. Your quantum core wasn't failing because it was imperfect. It was failing because it wasn't allowed to be imperfect. The aliens were silent for a moment, their robes moving in synchronized patterns that suggested deep thought. Finally, Bright Circle spoke. This explains much about our encounters with other human engineers. They often solve problems in ways we cannot predict or understand. It's because we learn different lessons, Tom explained. When humans first went to space, we didn't have elegant quantum drives or perfect containment fields. We had rockets that exploded half the time and spacesuits that needed constant repairs. But each failure taught us something new. He gestured at the now stable quantum core. Your technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also rigid. You've learned to control the universe. We humans, we learned to work with it. Deep Thought's eyes flickered with what Tom was beginning to recognize as excitement. This could revolutionize our understanding of engineering. The implications for our entire technological approach. That's the best part about learning something new, Tom said, gathering his tools. It doesn't mean everything you knew before was wrong. It just means you have more options now. Your perfect systems and our adaptive approaches. They can work together, just like those crystals are working together now. The quantum core pulsed softly behind them, its gentle rhythm a testament to the harmony between precision and adaptability, between perfect design and natural balance. In its glow, human and alien stood together, two different paths of advancement converging in a moment of shared understanding. As the aliens prepared to leave, Tom led them back to his workshop's main area. Their ship's engine hummed with a new harmony that seemed to please even the metal walls around them. Deep Thought had spent the last hour recording every detail of the repair in their data systems, their enthusiasm evident in the bright pulsing of their eyes. Now, Bright Circle said, standing tall in the workshop center, we must discuss payment for your services. The ambassador's metallic robes shimmered with formal significance. You have not only saved our ship but provided insights that could revolutionize our entire approach to quantum engineering. Name your price, human mechanic. Tom leaned against his workbench, absently wiping his hands on an old rag. The other two aliens moved closer, their postures suggesting they were prepared for an astronomical demand. After all, Tom had accomplished what their most advanced engineers had deemed impossible. We are prepared to offer advanced technology. Bright Circle continued when Tom remained silent. Perhaps a personal quantum drive, or access to our scientific databases. We could arrange for you to have priority trading rights with our species. Tom held up his hand, stopping the ambassador mid-sentence. Those are generous offers, he said, looking around his simple workshop with its worn tools and patched-up equipment. But that's not what I want. The alien's eyes flickered with surprise. Deep Thought leaned forward. Surely you must desire something of material value. Your skills are worth more than all the credits in this sector. Tom smiled, dropping the rag onto his workbench. What I want is simple. I want you to share this story. Not just the technical details, but the lesson behind it. I don't understand, Bright Circle said, their robes rippling with confusion. You want us to tell others about this repair. Exactly, Tom nodded. Tell them about how a primitive human mechanic fixed an advanced quantum drive. Tell them about how imperfection can sometimes be more stable than perfection. Tell them that different ways of thinking, different approaches to problems, have value. The aliens were silent for a moment, their glowing eyes dimming and brightening as they processed this unexpected request. You could ask for technology that would make you the wealthiest human in this sector, Deep Thought observed. Yet you ask only for us to share knowledge. Tom walked over to a wall covered in photographs. Ships he'd repaired, aliens he'd helped, problems he'd solved. Look around this workshop. Everything here is built from experience, from learning, from sharing knowledge. Every repair taught me something new, and every client taught me a different way of thinking. He turned back to face them. The galaxy is full of different species, different approaches, different solutions. But too often, we all think our way is the only way. If you share this story, maybe the next time someone encounters a problem, they'll be more willing to consider a different approach. That's worth more than any amount of credits or technology. Bright Circle's robes shifted to a pattern Tom hadn't seen before, one that seemed to radiate respect. In all our travels, we have encountered many species, many cultures, but few with such wisdom. We will honor your request, Tom the Mechanic. Your story will be shared across our networks, your lesson taught in our engineering academies. Good, Tom smiled, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Then that's payment enough. The ambassador looked at Tom's extended hand for a moment, then reached out to grasp it in the formal manner they had observed humans doing. The touch of metal robes against human skin seemed to symbolize something greater, a bridge between two very different approaches to understanding the universe. You have given us far more than a repair today, Bright Circle said softly. You have given us a new way of seeing. One standard Earth year had passed since the quantum core repair. Tom's workshop, once a quiet outpost on the edge of human space, had become something entirely different. He stood at his workshop's entrance, watching as 3 different alien ships waited their turn for his attention. The changes had started slowly at first. A few weeks after Bright Circle's departure, an alien ship had arrived, its captain specifically asking for the human who understands imperfect harmony. Then another came, and another. Word had spread far beyond what Tom had expected. The new quantum crystal alignment is holding perfectly steady, Deep Thought announced, walking out of their ship. The alien had become a regular visitor, often bringing new engineering challenges for Tom to solve. Or should I say, imperfectly steady. They added with what Tom had learned was their species' version of humor. Tom grinned, leading them into his workshop. The space had evolved over the year, now featuring a curious blend of human tools and alien technology. Each visiting species had left something behind, not as payment, but as part of the ongoing exchange of ideas. The Academy of Advanced Engineering has officially added adaptive systems theory to our curriculum. Deep Thought continued, their metallic robes shimmering with pride. Your repair method has spawned an entirely new field of study among our people. Good to hear, Tom said, checking his schedule tablet. A gift from a grateful alien merchant he'd helped last month. Though I hope you're teaching them that it's not about choosing between perfect and imperfect methods. It's about knowing when to use each approach. A soft chime indicated another arrival. Through the workshop's wide doors, Tom could see a massive ship descending. Its design was unlike anything he'd seen before, a blend of rigid geometric patterns and flowing, natural curves. Ah, Deep Thought's eyes brightened. That would be the new diplomatic vessel, the first of its kind, combining our traditional quantum engineering with what we now call human adaptive principles. The ship landed with remarkable grace. Its hull featured crystalline structures similar to the quantum core containment system Tom had modified a year ago, but these were arranged in patterns that allowed for natural movement and adaptation. They're calling it the bridge, Deep Thought explained as the ship's crew disembarked, a symbol of the connection between different engineering philosophies, between different ways of thinking. Tom watched as the new arrivals approached, representatives from 5 different species, all coming to learn about this strange human approach to technology. His simple request to share the story had created ripples he never could have predicted. "You know," he said, picking up his trusty tool belt, "when I asked for the story to be shared instead of taking advanced technology as payment, some people thought I was crazy. But look at what it's brought us." He gestured around his workshop, where alien engineers were already gathering, sharing ideas, comparing notes on how they'd adapted Tom's principles to their own technology. Some worked with quantum fields, others with biological systems, and some with forms of energy humans hadn't even discovered yet. But they all shared a new understanding that sometimes the best solution lay in finding balance between different approaches. "The payment I asked for," Tom continued, watching the diverse group of aliens interact, "it's worth more than all the credits or technology in the galaxy. Because every ship that leaves here carries more than just repairs. It carries new ideas, new ways of thinking." Deep Thought's robes chimed in agreement. "And that, as you humans say, is priceless." Tom smiled, heading toward the gathered aliens. There were problems to solve, ideas to share, and bridges to build. Just another day at Tom's repair shop, where the impossible just meant nobody had tried the right kind of imperfect solution yet.